Resolution 12-74, proposing an amendment to the land use ordinance relating to temporary shelters. Members, we have a posted proposed CD1 that was approved by this committee during our meeting on April 5th that makes the following amendments. Proposes that a temporary shelter shall only be permitted on a zoning lot with a minimum size of 2, not 5 acres. Includes a new subsection J that would permit temporary shelters only in the Waianae Sustainable Communities Plan area and the EVA Development Plan area, which are in Council District 1. Members, we also have a posted proposed revised CD1 to Resolution 12-74 that includes amendments made by the CD1 and makes the following additional amendments to Exhibit A. Clarifies that the 5-year limitation starts upon issuance of the certificate of occupancy and that the term shall not be renewable. Specifies that the procedure to notify the neighborhood board of a proposed temporary shelter shall be set forth in section 21-2.40-2B2 of the land use ordinance. Provides that exemption from public sewer connection requirements may be granted only if an alternative acceptable to the Department of Planning and Permitting is approved, or in the case of a temporary shelter that is outside of the city wastewater system, if an acceptable sewer alternative is approved by the State Department of Health.
Record Giro Sumano, Deputy Director, Department of Planning and Permitting. Mr. Chairman, as we've stated before, we are supportive of the measure. We have reviewed the proposed CD1 changes. We have some minor amendments or edits to those changes, and we've passed out a list of those amendments. But all in all, as a pilot program, we support the efforts of Councilmember Berg to put this forward.
Before I begin, I wanted to state that I am a member of the Nanakuli Maili Neighborhood Board and a chair of the Agricultural Farming Committee. I'm a member of the Economic Development, which has agriculture on their subcommittee. Member of that. I'm also an active participant in the Mikilua farming community, as well as the West Oahu Farm Bureau with Mr. Harry Choi, and I'm also a farmer myself. My family owns a Pikaki farm, and in fact, several of my family owns several floral farms out on the Waianae coast, and I am in support of this CD1 proposed to 1274 resolution.
You know, there is a problem with vandalism I've been reading about in the paper, and I've always supported having, you know, housing on ag land so that the workforce can live there, and they can also act as security if it's on the borders. So do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts about more security? Because the farmers can't afford to hire people.
I totally agree, especially with that incident happening up in Waihiwa on the North Shore, where that farmer actually, I believe, shot that person who was actually stealing some of their, I guess, his farm products. So I mean, this can actually also be a security mechanism for farmers, of course, who are up in their age and not able to provide the necessary security to secure their, you know, their farming products, their machines. And a lot of the farmers out there on the Waianae coast are up in their age, and it's, you know, I think it'll be to their benefit to actually have someone housed on their property to kind of help assist with security purposes, as well as assisting with the farming practices on their farm.
First of all, I want to thank the author of the resolution. I know this has taken some time for him to finally fashion something that is in final form for this committee's consideration, and if it should pass out of committee, then on to the full council. I recall a trip I took over to Washington State to attend the WIR conference last year, and I noticed along the way that there were migrant workers. This was during the apple harvest season. And migrant workers in temporary housing came in the form of tents on the grounds of the apple orchards, and stuff living, from what I understand. It's like 10 men to a tent or something like that. And so Councilmember Berg is trying to fashion housing that would be much more comfortable than the living quarters of our friends who have to harvest apples in Washington State. So in the way I read it, and because the DPP has approved it, this would be a much more comfortable situation for our farm workers. And I think more interestingly, now that I have become the chairman of the Committee on Public Safety, I would like to work with Councilmember Berg to see whether or not this tent and temporary housing can also be used as temporary emergency shelters in the case of a
I've
disaster.
supported this particular resolution from the very inception. I wanted to commend my colleague, Councilmember Berg. I want to commend him, first of all, for championing this particular effort. With the issue at hand, I think it behooves us to not look at every possible alternative to remedy this particular issue. I think secondly, as was mentioned in the testimony, we have an issue with theft on our agricultural lots, and I would dare to say that the majority of these lots are in my district. So this would be something that we would take a look at as well as a possibility to address that issue. But let me just close with this. I wanted to commend my colleague for his patience, a virtue that he doesn't always exhibit, but in this particular matter, he has, for waiting all this time and for your efforts to work with him to move this forward. But I look at this moving along. I also looked at to the department to work with both Councilmember Garcia and Councilmember Berg so we can get this possibility sooner rather than later. So thank you, Chairman, for your leadership on this.
Thank you.
Very supportive of this from the beginning because it solves two problems. It helps our farm. My main concern has been the farming community, and this helps the farmers with workforce housing, and it also provides the security that's needed at this time. And many of our farmers can't afford to hire people to provide security. So this is, to me, a win-win as far as the farming, the agricultural industry. I think this is a idea that I'd like to thank Councilmember Berg for bringing this forward and for sticking with it. We've been discussing this for a long time, and I thank the chair for providing this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to congratulate Councilmember Berg for his diligence, his patience, and his perseverance in working on this issue and seeing the resolution through until we finally got legislation that was workable and that was agreeable to the department as well as to his own community. I know you put a lot of time into this, Councilmember Berg, and I believe you should be congratulated and commended for getting to this point. I've only wished that there was some coverage by our friends in the news media to cover this very worthy and very positive event, and I'm hopeful that at the full council meeting that we will have that coverage so that your work on behalf of your community can get out there and your community can see that there are many issues that you advance on their behalf.
We've heard security, theft, vandalism, but predominantly also we have a very, very prolific, unwarranted, unsolicited, illegal dumping syndrome. And this container would also provide not just security and hopefully a deterrent to theft, but the dumping that's going on. So I was looking at this being able to cover a multitude of win-wins, and I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned. Illegal dumping, these so-called modular, prefabricated, or shipping containers as defined, retrofitted, would be pertinent to help qualm that going on in my district right now. Thank you.
So members, any objections or reservations to passing out this resolution?